go back to normalcy in the country and restore normalcy in their country and protect strategic installations. This decision was welcomed by Canada. You had the US and the UN Secretary General, and you can also remember the address at the United Nations General Assembly, the United States President Joe Biden thanking Kenya for the gesture and called on countries to embrace peace and prevent conflict. Dr. Abdulwahab, when you're looking at this, I don't know if you saw that statement that came from the US President Joe Biden, especially when it comes to the issue of Kenya taking the lead on this particular matter. What are your thoughts on that?
It's the first time, in fact, Kenya is deploying, significant number of the police officers to Haiti. Although the Haitians, large number of the Haitian society are against it because they see deploying, Kenya, troops and together with Rwanda and also. The fact they see large number of the Haitians, the United Nations, in fact, they see it as Acobayan forces rather than the protection forces, because some people are saying there is a lot of mineral which is going on in Haiti. That's why the Western world are interested, in fact, to have a share of that looted issues. Unfortunately, Haiti is the only country in Latin America which 99% people are black people. In fact, sometimes back they applied to be part of the African Union. Fortunately, African Union rejected it. So the issue of Haiti is very complicated. But since the Kenyans they have an experience of what you call peacekeeping issues, and I think they will gain they will gain what you call experience that part of the world. And in fact, the Kenyan, police officers are very professional police officers. But if they're going to keep the law and order in that part of the world, that's a step forward. That's a step forward. But also you have to consider, the concerns of the local population of Haiti as well. Yeah.
All right. George, your thoughts on the same, and do we have really that capacity to be able to send 1,000 security officers to Haiti to help and aid in this mission?
My thoughts are that, yes, we have the capacity, we have the numbers, we have the experience, because this is not the first time that we are deploying police outside the borders of the country.
Right.
We've done so in Sierra Leone, we did the same in Bosnia, Herzegovina, etc., and they performed very well there. And I believe that is the push that made the international community look at Kenya and decided that we are able to contribute and go and pacify that country. What I would agree with the doctor is that we should consider the opinion of the locals, because there is some kind of resistance. And in that kind of environment, it becomes very hostile for the officers. We don't know what will happen. We should have agreed, talked to the people, made them see the sense of having Kenyans and Rwandese police deployed to that country to help them fight the escalating crime that is there. But the fact that we are going, despite that resistance, basically it will show the people that it will be them against us. And that kind of environment will not be very conducive for police officers to be able to deliver on their mandate. Right. I also believe that the other reason why we had to look for an African country to deploy police officers there is because of the population. As Dr. Aria said here, 99% of Haitians are blacks. And it's believed that a black contingent will be more acceptable as opposed to sending people from Europe or America. Right. And that sense is there, but still we need to engage the people so that our officers become acceptable by the community. And this will largely enable them to commit and produce results. Right,
indeed. All right. And we'll get to hear from Bwana Nasonga Muliro, also joining us here in studio. Meanwhile, this is certainly what is captured on the DN when it comes to the issue of our conversation, how the Westgate Mall attack changed Kenya's security laws and practices. The picture there, that's the Private Security Regulatory Authority Director General Fazul Mohammed yesterday during an interview. Now, this deadly terror attack on Westgate a decade ago changed many aspects of Kenyan lives. The attack, which led to the deaths of 67 people, rattled the entire country and the region itself, which prompted a re-evaluation of security in public spaces. The government began profiling and watching its own citizens, ushering in a new era of mass surveillance. We'll get to the details of that in a moment. I just want to get just very quick, brief comments, first of all, as we get to that from our panelists. Let me begin with you, Bonamliro, as you join us this morning. So this is where we are 10 years later, and a lot has changed in terms of how we view our security because of what happened at the Westgate Mall. We have encountered more attacks when you're looking at the Dusit attack and also at the Garissa University attack, but this essentially brought to the fore the risk that is associated with terror activities, and especially the Al-Qaeda affiliated Al-Shabaab group. But just basically, first, very quickly, the Westgate Mall attack, that was quite, you know, something that Kenya was not prepared for at that point. Has that changed? Where were you? Do you remember that incident?
Yes, yes. And thank you very much, Zainab. I think you know, we had developed a lax, you know, and Kenyans thought that the aspect of terrorism was purely for the security people. And Westgate actually told us several things. That one, even very neutral places like shopping malls, which we thought were not targets, clearly it showed now that terrorism was no longer an aspect that you can say is outside society. And it's from this that you saw aspects like even the stringent measures we are seeing, you know, issues of registering your SIM card, because we are told at that time it was an aspect of changing so many SIM cards in terms of communication. That was a very open and free zone of communication, but now it became very strict. So we can say that looking back 10 years, that was an eye-opener in terms of security for in the basis of the people. What's the role of the people in terms of security?
Right. And
the changes in terms of what are the targets of terrorists. And it was no longer global US and Kenyan security, but now that's where we started thinking about security begins with me.
Right.
Just good.
All right. Dr. Abdulhab, your reflections of that particular 4-day siege that began on a day like this 10 years ago, suddenly changing a lot of the way we viewed our own security here as a country.
For me, nothing much changed, to be honest with you.
10 years later?
10 years later. let's be practical when we're discussing the security matters. And since mid-2022, the threat of Al-Shabaab has grown tenfold. Now they're venturing out of Somalia into Kenya and Ethiopia as well. So what is missing for us, Dr. Mulira said, is a role of the community, not the role of the security apparatus, the role of the community. We must, also assist as a community to the security agencies. For instance, we have to borrow also a leaf from other countries. For instance, Mauritania has a 2,000-kilometer, border with Niger, and the way they contain the terrorism, in fact, is a case study. We have to borrow a leaf from them. Kenya has a border of almost 680 kilometers along the porous border between Somalia and Kenya. And now, still they are threat. Now, just two weeks ago, they go into Lamu. And what they have done, everybody knows, is now they changed the tactics. Even they use in social media, so at least they can inflict, what they call a terror. And in fact, what we have seen, the pictures are horrifying pictures, so that people have a fear. So the issue is, let me go back to the issue of the community, the role of the community. The way they have done the Mauritania and Sahel states is they engage the local community, they engage the local Muslim scholars, so that at least, not only militarily, we have to also to defeat them ideologically, so that they empower the local, sheikhs and local, Muslim scholars, They go into the mosques, they preach the people, they tell the right path of the Islam. So the other issue is we have to also engage, you know, the education system. For instance, the primary, the secondary, up to university level. The youth must learn. Must enlighten. In other words, you know, to the danger of the violent, the violent, extremism.
Right.
And that's exactly is one of the issues. In fact, I'm going to, advise the government to do that, so that the youth can understand what is the, terrorism is all about. What are the mission of the terrorism?
Right.
So, in that sense, when we have to engage the youth, when you have to engage the community level, when they also involve the issue of the local sheikhs, at least we can ideologically defeat those guys. Now they came to Lamo. They're differentiating between Muslims and Christians, so that they can create the mistrust among the Kenyan society. But when they are in Somalia, they are killing the Muslims day and night. Day in, day out. They are killing the Somalis, in Mogadishu and elsewhere. So are they Muslims, those guys? What's the difference Muslims in Somalia and Muslims in Lamo?
So definitely advancing a strategic agenda when it comes to that, and by releasing that, especially on social media, and governable, where everybody will be able to see and say, okay, so this is why, they've already, sort of won by entrenching that ideology, that idea that, the fear that, we should keep away from a certain community because, Al-Shabaab will not attack this community. We should be able to come together as our own. So it's creating already conflict within our society.
That's exactly what in fact, that's the tactics now they're using, because the government also must address the, historical grievances among the communities on the border, so that the community on the border, they have, they must assist the government when it came to the security issues.
All right.
And that's one of the issues. In fact, one of the issues, in fact, I'm going to encourage the community on the border so that they can assist the government and security apparatus. If they don't do that, then the whole area became ungovernable.
All right.
Then it will affect the health, it will affect the education, it will affect the social life of the border communities. Right. That's exactly, we must come up with a strategy whereby we are going to contain those guys the way they contain elsewhere in Africa. Africa is 54 countries. Out of the 54 countries, 33 of them, they have the same issue of the terrorism. Terrorism today is a global issue, it's no longer even a localized issue.
Right.
That's why the Sahel states, and now they are coming together, assisting one another, so that they can easily defeat the terrorism. Why can't we do that? What is going on today, right now in Somalia? In fact, it will affect the entire region, because the strategy of the Somali government, how they're going to contain the Al-Shabaab itself, is a failed project.
And we'll come back to that, Doc, once we get into the conversation. But
Thank you.
Bwana Msamali, as well, your thoughts on the incident that transpired on that particular day, and sort of the lessons perhaps learnt, and even before we get to the lessons, really, do you think we've made any strides so far?
I mean, Zainab, my thought is that we are talking about Westgate. We are not looking at the history of terrorism in Kenya. To be brutally honest, we were caught pants down because we are not doing the right thing. We had several attacks before the Westgate. Let's look at the 1975 attack at the OTC. That was homegrown terrorism. We did nothing. We had the Norfolk Hotel attack by the Palestinian Liberation Front.
1981.
1981.
Yeah.
Kenya did nothing. We had the American embassy attack. We also sat down and said, this is not our problem. We did not consider it our problem then. The Paradise attack. We as Kenyans felt like this is a war, a foreign war that is being fought in our land. And the government did not take any action. We felt like now this is an American problem, this is the Israelis' problem, and we did nothing about it. We did not look at it and say we need to protect our people from this kind of attacks. And then came the Westgate attack. Now this is an attack that focused on Kenya. We were talking about the American embassy, we were talking about the Israeli concerns, but now the Westgate attack was for us. The war was brought home by the Al-Shabaab. And if you look at the way we dealt with that problem then, we had so many mishaps when it came to the response. It took us more than 3 hours before we had the first batch of police officers on the scene, We left it to armed civilians to combat the Al-Shabaab inside there. The coordination was not there. We were not even able to set up a command center, because all along when these attacks were happening in the country, we did not view it as something that later it will come to hit us.
Right.
And I think the Westgate attack was an eye-opener. And this is where now we realized we are now open to attacks by the likes of the Al-Shabaab. We are now open to attacks by the likes of Al-Qaeda, the ISIS, and every other person. As Dr. has said, as much as we are hyping ourselves and saying we've taken steps, we've come up with measures, we've come up with the anti-terrorism laws, these are only baby steps. We are not yet there.
All right.
We need now to focus on dealing with terrorism strategically, as opposed to what we are doing right now. We are using tactics. The deployment of the military, these are just tactics, and you see they're not working. A governor the other day said that 3/4 of his county is under the hands of the Al-Shabaab. That is a very worrying statement, and it should be an eye-opener to us that probably we need to change the way we are dealing with this issue of terrorism in our country.
All right. And I want to take a quick break here on AM Live this morning before we come back and have this conversation much more deeper, and we also wind up on the paper. The hashtag we're using this morning is AM Live NTV. Talk to us. What do you think we have achieved? Some of the reflections of that Westgate Mall attack 10 years ago and the lessons learned. Have we made any strides in terms of counter-terrorism in the country? We're going to be back in a short while. Stay with us.
As we celebrate 50 years of excellence, the Kenyatta International Convention Center stands not only as an architectural marvel, but as a beacon of unity.
Remember when we constructed this building, it was all purpose for just conventions. And this is the only building, I believe, that exists in East Africa and Africa that is just a single purpose building.
KICC over the past 50 years has been the eye of the country.
50 years is a milestone, and we want to showcase the milestones of the conference tourism, bring out the nostalgia of KICC and giving it back its glory.
Join us as we celebrate 50 years of existence and uncover the history, significance, and impact of this remarkable structure.
Hey yo, what's going on? What's wrong with VP? It's the Trendsetter right here. What it is, what it do, what it does. So let me ask you guys, where would you be on a Friday night? That's why we bring you the Friday night party, a Friday night experience by yours truly, Joseph Trends, right here, the Trendsetter Ndani Nation FM. That is 96.3 Nairobi, where good music lives. Remember, we're bringing you everything celebrity gossip. Everything hot, anything that is trending, you're gonna be catching it right here, live and direct. Le Général Dangote. Tufanye like it every Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. Twende kazi.
Geriatric population is patients above the age of 65 years. They are a group of patients who we want to screen for certain conditions. For example, we want to do cancer screenings on them, and we want to screen them for signs of early dementia.
What is, the biggest challenge, the biggest issues that you see mostly on geriatrics?
As you age, your muscles become weaker, your bones become weaker. Many other diseases accompany old age.
We tend sometimes also neglect our older family members or older patients, and sometimes that also stems from caretaker fatigue.
Caregivers themselves, and this is from a geriatrics point of view, do they know the needs of the geriatrics?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because in some settings we have some caregivers who are trained. Others are just working there because they want an income.
This is where you're throwing money down the drain.
How?
On these cleaning products.
Impossible.
Harpic 10X. While other cleaners flow away, Harpic 10X's viscous formula in only one round of application gives you sparkling, clean toilet. Harpic, 10 times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great savings too.
In every corner of Africa, leaders rise. From corporate pioneers to sports champions, innovative minds, and creative souls. You are the leaders of tomorrow, and we want to celebrate you. Are you a leader in your pack? Nominate yourself or someone you know for this year's Top 40 Under 40 and be part of the movement. Visit www.top40.bdafrica.com to submit your nomination.
This week on Daring Abroad.
B360 is a full-service architectural, engineering, consulting, and logistics firm.
Find out how Peter Karenge and Alex Njoroge have made it in project management for big clients including the US government.
We also serve the diaspora a lot, where we design and also build for them.
Also this week, turning plots into homes.
We are in apartments, we are in villas, and we are in bungalows back in Kenya.
How Naftali Mwangi's unique niche is attracting the diaspora market. And on our back home segment,
we are now doing a 5-week pre-departure training.
Increased governmental support for Kenyan migrant workers abroad.
It's Butta's birthday month and you can enjoy free shopping of up to 500 bob. Offer starts at 2,499 only. Visit your nearest Butta store today.
All right, welcome back to the program. We're watching M Live on NTV, and of course this 21st of September 2023, we're reflecting back 10 years ago on this exact date on really what happened in Kenya in terms of a terror attack that was launched in a mall here in Nairobi, and of course that changing the trajectory of how we responded to such issues. But before we get into that conversation, let me just give you a quick glimpse of also what you can manage to get on our DN this morning. Acquitted suspect remains missing 3 years later. That's moments after Chief Magistrate Francis Sandai convicted 2 individuals for their role in that mall attack. Prosecutors felt that the acquitted Liban Omar was the one that got away. Sandai delivered his judgment minutes later after 8 a.m. on the 7th of October 2020, based on circumstantial evidence, largely based on some call records submitted to the court by prosecutors. And in case involving covert law violations such as terrorism, courts often allow the use of circumstantial evidence, more so when parties show that direct evidence is unlikely to be uncovered. Mohamed Abdi and Hussein Hassan Mustafa were found guilty of helping plot and execute the 21st September attack, which claimed the lives of 67 people. Omar, a Somali refugee and a brother to one of the 4 gunmen that executed the terror attack, was however acquitted. Prosecutors allege that Omar used a Nokia mobile phone to contact his brother, and that is what linked him to that particular court case. Now, and I ruled that the communication cited between the phone and other handsets could have been made by his brother, who was then charged in this case, hence his decision to acquit Omar. But what happened is that Omar and his family thought that he had been vindicated and would no longer be referred to as a second accused, a tag he had carried for 7 years. But the fate of the appeal is in limbo, as nobody has laid eyes on Omar since the 8th of October 2020, just 24 hours after his acquittal. It was on Friday when Omar's lawyer Mbugua Mureithi confirmed that nobody has ever seen or heard from Omar since his abduction by hooded men who identified themselves as state security officers. So that was about 3 years ago when that happened, right after the case where the other 2 men were charged with and found guilty of being part of the 21st September attack of Westgate. We'll come back to that. Also, you can find this story. Control of budget flags 15.3 billion irregular spending by the Treasury. Revelations pointing to a conflict between Treasury and the COB of authority to spend public funds. It adds to the uproar that Kenyans have been building up in their hearts and minds with regard to the issue of the cost of living in the country. So you can get a full report by Julian Amboko on exactly what this means for the country as well. Meanwhile, full entry awaits in Ngonga as corruption files pile up. All right, that's the nominee of the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, Benson Ngonga, who actually appeared before members of Parliament of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee for his vetting in Parliament, in terms of the picture that you can see there. But there's quite a lot that is expected of him, and once he's been sworn into office next week as well. On Taifa Leo, just a front page, Wasingome ya Ruto, all right? It's wanasiasa washirika wa rais eneo la Rift Valley wana wakati mgumu kutuliza raia wanaolalamikia bei za bidhaa. Je, itakuwaje? That's the question that is confronting the president at this point. In terms of the Business Daily, how Kenyan security spending spying changed after Westgate. It is about the economic impact that this particular attack had on the economy, and really when we're looking at how money would be allocated then differently to security apparatus at that point. I remember when former President Uhuru Kenyatta took office on the 3rd, okay, it was in March 2013, ATPU, that's the Anti-Terror Police Unit, was just a small office within the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and his predecessor had allocated just 30.5 million, mostly for salaries. But after this incident, things changed, and of course that number rose quite sharply, if I can get the number to see. And in the first budget for the financial year 2014-2015, the former President Kenyatta increased the allocation to the ATPU more than 10 times to 333.1 million Kenya shillings. That 10 times than the allocation was just a year ago. So did that change anything? We'll have a look at that as well. This on the Standard also no longer at ease. It's about the issue of the cost of living, and all is not well within Ruto's inner sanctums. It is fast exploding into the open fast. It was UDA Secretary General Malala taking up the battle to collapse Kenya Kwanza, and then now you have Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Trade CS Moses Kuria opening a can of worms with their war of words, triggering resignation calls for the former Gatundu MP as Cabinet Secretary. So how will that pan out? That is something that we are yet to find out. On the East African as well, East Africa braces for war on terror as ATMIS exits as well. We'll touch on this in a moment, all right? As the African mission in Somalia leaves, the troops are carrying with them the continual burden of fighting Al-Shabaab terror activities across the region. So what does that mean for us as a country as well, and our troops in Somalia? and then the issue of our border security, right? And touching on that as well in terms of security, a school gate man was killed and at least 5 houses torched in a suspected Al-Shabaab attack early Wednesday morning in Widho Mashambani village in Lamu West. This even as the government says it will deploy special and elite forces to deal with the threat of terrorism in northern Kenya and coastal counties. Martin Mwangi has the details of that story.
A group of heavily armed militants are believed to have abruptly showed up at Majembeni Primary School in Lamu West, where 49-year-old George Summit Gitocho serves as a watchman at around 1 a.m. This before forcing him to accompany them several kilometers to Widho Mashambani village, where they torched at least 5 houses and looted several household items. The terrorists are also said to have stolen livestock before fleeing to the nearby Boni forest.
Ikawa watu wamekuja wakiwa wamejiami na mabunduki. Mimi nilikuwa kwa nyumba na watoto wangu 3. Wakagonga mlango. Raude ya kwanza mimi nikaamka nikasikia ni watu wanagonga mlango, lakini wakati nilikaa kama dakika 2 nilisikia wakiongea. Wakaingia tena wakagonga tena, wakaingia na mlango kwa nyumba. Mimi wakati waliingia kwa nyumba nilikuwa nimeinuka na ule mtoto wangu mdogo, nikaacha wale wengine wakiwa wamelala.
Hii kitu tunauliza serikali mtusaidie, manake hiki tumekuwa ikirudiwa. Kila wakati tunaambiwa kuna usalama, tukirudi tunakuja wanaume wetu wanauawa. Wanaume wetu wanauawa. Tutazidi kuuawa mpaka lini jamani serikali?
Meanwhile, the national government says it will deploy special and elite forces to deal with the threat of terrorism in the northern and coastal parts of the country. Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki, speaking in Wayu, Tana River County, also noted that the government would also invest in more advanced technology and weapons.
Na wale magaidi ambao wanatusumbua hapa kutoka nchi jirani katika eneo la Boni Forest, Northeastern, hapa Tana River kidogo. Tumeamua ni vita kamili baina ya serikali ya Kenya na hawa magaidi. Na wale vikosi ambao tunaleta hapa hawacheki na magaidi na wanajua jinsi ya kuwashughulikia.
Communities living in border areas have also been urged to coexist peacefully, and all relevant government and judicial institutions to arbitrate whenever there are cross-border disputes. National government administration officers have also been directed to help resolve the historical grievances without taking any sides. Martin Mwangi, NTV.
And the screech of a metal detector as you pass by, or spikes at the entrance of a facility before you drive in, are all elements you may be familiar with. Since the 2013 attack at Westgate, the country's approach to countering terrorism has trickled into the places visited on a daily basis in order to safeguard lives. However, are the measures enough? Some argue that more resources need to be pumped into the private security sector to empower security guards and other relevant staff. In our special 10 Years On, Gina Kirori spoke to experts and the director of the National Counter-Terrorism Center to assess the levels of the country's awareness levels a decade after that tragic attack.
September 21st, 2013 is an occurrence the country would love to forget. However, despite the attack on Westgate Mall upsetting the country's semblance of peace and security, it paved the way for a raft of changes.
Westgate is instructive because out of Westgate, a very good thing was born for Kenya, and that is agencies coming together, working together, no more silos, sharing information, doing operations together to bring down the threat of terrorism.
Because of course, without intelligence, you are as vulnerable as a sitting duck. So we've seen a lot more investment in the intelligence, and many times we fail to appreciate the role the intelligence services have played.
One of the most visible changes which took place in the aftermath of the attack are the now normalized metal detectors at shopping malls.
While some of the measures were still in place before the Westgate attack, the seriousness of them was only taken after the 2013 destruction that happened at Westgate, such as here in supermarkets. However, those in the security sector still argue much more needs to be done to empower those in the private security sector to ensure that all lives of Kenyans are safeguarded.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of there's quite a lot to be done. We are not at a position that really is desirous as a country, and the private security sector needs a lot of mainstreaming, especially ensuring that private security companies are training their guards to the level that they are able to be our frontline security response mechanism.
Security and convenience are actually a tight balance, and we have to really balance it perfectly on this scale. You may think it is inconvenient, but you know, perhaps that check, for example, you may have nothing on you, but you can imagine if this person who is checking, who has a responsibility to check, ignored you and ignore the next person, remember whether the next person is the one who turns out to be the terrorist.
Experts also argue that the implementation of the Private Security Act 2016, which has seen a lot of private security companies aligned to the proper mandate of protecting citizens among legislation, has helped the private security sector.
Because terrorism is not it's not a crime like just murder or robbery with violence. Terrorism is highly compartmentalized. Terrorists operate in cells. And so what one cell may know is not necessarily what the other one knows. In the end game, they all know they want to conduct a terrorist attack, but they compartmentalize so that the one cell does not, even if it is discovered, does not blow up their operations.
Citizens are also considered an important layer in the security ecosystem of the country. However, the National Counter-Terrorism Center is urging Kenyans to be vigilant about information but wary of fake news.
A lot have been done in terms of improving inter-agency cooperation. You hear of multi-agency operations and multi-agency teams. This is a concept that came off from the developments and part of the lessons and learnings from the Westgate Mall terror attack.
I see sometimes online Kenyans, terrorists post violent content and Kenyans share it. I would want to encourage people, please do not share anything violent that terrorists do, because doing that you are doing the work of the terrorists. You see, they want publicity. So they post all these propaganda videos. Sometimes they post very repugnant content in there.
Other than a paradigm shift in the country's security, tales of resilience also came out of the attack, putting a spear in the agenda of spreading fear and terror despite the ever-looming threat of the enemy. Ngina Kirori, NTV.
All right, thanks, Gina, for that. Certainly just setting the base for really what transpired then and what still needs to be done when we're talking about terrorism, not just beyond our borders, but also inside our borders as well. But the role of the private security sector has also come to the fore because they are sort of the first line of defense when it comes to such issues, and especially the risk that it poses to facilities, buildings, and key installations as well. And there was actually an audit that was made public last year that concluded that private security guards were major players in the industry and they needed to be embraced. Have we managed to capture the essence of that audit and move towards ensuring that the guards, that person that you meet at the at the front of a building, is able to detect and counter any risk associated to terrorism?
Yeah, Zainab, I see it in this way, and my colleagues have touched on that. My brother Msamali talked of it has come home, the people. And you know, Prof here captured very well where is the what we call now the community approach to counter-terrorism. Where is it? So for a long time, we left the aspects of countering or fighting terrorism or concerns with that first at the global level. Then it came home and we said, even the governments themselves kept it very high level. Even the locals, the citizens, you could not discuss issues of terrorism because you believed it's a government issue and you could be captured. Then now, with time, they realize that these are people within the communities, and therefore we have to think about the role of the community. And there was just that ordinary flat statement that usalama unaanza na mimi. You remember during President Uhuru's time, but we didn't know how because there is always an aspect of the technical aspect of security. And therefore, with the same thinking, you know, the laissez-faire that nobody even bothered, the security agencies, never even, leave alone recognition, see the role of the private security groups. We see them as part of even the gate. Their role is to open and close. But with the time, even in terms of local crime, if you want to understand aspects of crime within installations like hotels, business places, put your ear on the ground around these private, the people we call soldiers. They understand that they are at the gate, the security people. And therefore, when Westgate happened, we learned one thing that as the experts in security have said, we learned one thing, that we could have saved lives. It could have not been so as bad as it was if the first person of call of point, that is the private security, the guard who was there, had been capacitated or incorporated, as they are now talking about that, incorporating, I think, is it last week or this week, PS Omolo was talking about incorporating them in counter-terrorism activities.
Right.
If we had even sensitized, just included them, given them basics of how to delay the aspect of these terrorist attacks, then we'll have not had it as worse as it was. And therefore, I think, as much as we are talking, you know, it shouldn't be reactionary that when something happens, then now we come from behind the houses, under the bed, and we say, now we are going to do this. And when we feel that it is not there, we go back to where we were. I think progressively, apart from just registering, I hope registration is not for the purposes of, as we say, documenting people so that they can pay their taxes. But I hope this registration is clearly for the purposes of identifying them first. Second, now incorporating them in the whole spectrum of national security. And then third, capacitating them in terms of equipment and training. And that's what I've had the PS talking about. We are going to train them. But still, even as we speak, it's still a case of stratification. Depending on, remember, these are private security, is a private enterprise, is driven by profits and competition within a free market. And you'll find that those that are established, it appears they are closer to approachable, and you'll find others go to rural schools or somewhere down there, and you'll find that the security person has all the elements that can make somebody become a criminal, because you have put someone there to guard a very lucrative or expensive, and he is not well paid, and he looks very weak and hungry in some matters there. So we look at that and we say we shouldn't look at it in a stratified manner and see that if we empower all of them equally, then actually we should think about that, because these are private enterprises competing among themselves. And one element of competition is who is better equipped and looks better than the rest. So if the government intervenes, what is it intervening to do? To levelize the field or just register them and move ahead? So that's one of the questions and the challenges in that case there.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Dr. Abdulhab, even with that, I also want to get your thoughts on the role of the private security sector and also on the issue of surveillance. Looking at what the DN is saying here, that the country has significantly increased spending on intelligence. Spending on the National Intelligence Service has more than tripled from 13.4 billion in the year ended 2013 to now 44.3 billion in the current one. This huge budget enhancing capacity for phone, email, internet surveillance as well, and also eavesdropping, is reckoned to have foiled more terror attack attempts. Do you think that has sort of helped us move away from, a more relaxed state that we were in before 2013, and the essence that now we have a better intelligence system in the country?
In fact, it's a huge amount of money, in fact, if you look at how they spend it, that much of money. But the question is, before we, spending a lot of money in intelligence gathering and also social media issues, monitoring what they call the telephones and so on and so forth, we have to address two issues, which is more important than the issue of the monitoring, what you call the activities, monitoring what you call the telecommunications and social media and so on and so forth. The issue is, unless we address the grievances of the local community at the border, where they came at the side of the border, unless we, resolve and address proper, the historical grievances of the local communities, and address the issue of the corruption. Corruption, in fact, kills the nations. Let me give you an example for Afghanistan, for instance. America went to Afghanistan 20 years ago. They spent trillions of dollars just as surveillance, the social media issues, monitoring activities, and so on and so forth. They lost thousands of lives in Afghanistan. 20 years later, they replaced Taliban with Taliban. The reason why? The reason is, when Joe Biden was asked the question, he said that, let's corrupt the enemy. Underline that word. Fortunately, they are selling the military hardware to Taliban. Every and each individual in the government is a corrupt guy. They turn the office into, their own shops, just their own curtains. Afghanistan collapsed because of the corruption.
So that was a systemic issue.
Yes. The same here, we have the same problem here again. Unless we address the issue of corruption, we cannot overcome the problem of the terrorism as well. That's one issue. The second issue is, we have to deal those guys, ideologically, not only sometimes militarily and surveillance, monitoring the activities, listening to the phone calls. That alone cannot contain the terrorism itself. But when you engage the local, localized, security issues, when you engage the local, ulamas or local, Islamic scholars, contrary what they have, because the Somalis and the Kenyans as well, always they practice, what they call a Shafi'iyya version of Islam. Shafi'iyya version of Islam. Against what they call that, Al-Shabaab, also they practice, a Hanbali version of Islam. So why can't we empower our local, ulamas, so that at least they can go into the places like mosques, like schools, like the universities, telling the people the right path of Islam. If you fail to do that, we cannot defeat those guys ideologically. They are now coming to the coast, for instance, what's going on today in Lamu. The Lamu issues, apart from the terrorism issues, there's also injustices. For instance, if you look at the last administration, they give certain community almost 30,000 titles unlike the locals also, they also obtain less than 1,000 titles. So when you have seen such kind of injustices on the ground, what are you going to expect the people on the ground? Are they willing to cooperate what they call the government? No, they will never do that. So the issue of injustice also we have to address, so that people they can live together in peace and harmony. If you address all those issues, the land issues, the justice issues, the employment issues, the corruption issues, all those, if you address proper, I can tell you, we can easily contain those guys. Because, let me give you another classical example in Somalia, what's going on in Somalia. Why the Al-Shabaab is still, thriving in Somalia. Do you know why? Because of their, when it came to good governance, they are better than government. In terms of justice, in terms of delivery service and so on and so forth. That's why people are saying unless we have alternative, government which is more justice, more kind of what they call a good governance. That's why the government of Somalia they failed to defeat Al-Shabaab because of the corruption. Because of the corruption. Other issue is people are saying if today Al-Shabaab is easily eliminated, for instance, in Somalia, and government is so corrupt, so incompetent. In fact, the country will go back in 1991, where the community, the tribes against another tribe, clan against another clan. That's exactly. At the same time, Al-Shabaab, they don't intend the issue of clanism, the issue of tribalism. Al-Shabaab, in fact, is today they became a regional. Even the members of the Kenyan community are there. They're part of Al-Shabaab. They are, in fact, across the board. All the clans are there. They don't need to think clans. What they want to push is agenda for ideological agenda. Right. And that's why, in fact, they study the weaknesses of the society among the Kenyans, so that they know these people have grievances. These people they have problems. They have injustice problems. So they capitalize on that. So that at least they can, they can differentiate Muslims with non-Muslims. Because not they are sympathizing with Muslims. No, it's a kind of tactics. It's kind of to create a mistrust among the Kenyan community. That's exactly. If they're going to spare Muslims, why can't they spare Muslims in Somalia? Why can't they spare Muslims in Niger, in Mauritania, in Burkina Faso, in Guinea, in Nigeria, Boko Haram? They will never do that. These people, they really study, our local, dynamics. They really study our problems. That's why the scholars, the researchers, the ulamas, the government, and the community must come together and discuss the issue. This is a national issue. If we don't address the proper, then only God can save us.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Mali, do you agree that we must address the issues that plague us as a country, first of all, in terms of injustices and all these things that what Dr. Abdulwahab is saying, so that we may be able to capture those weaknesses or gaps that perhaps these terror groups might want to capitalize on and gain numbers and gain their entrance into our borders?
I believe that just like Afghanistan, we are facing a less corrupt enemy in Kenya, and our main undoing has always been corruption. And also what Dr. Ria said about the historical injustices. For example, he has given an example of Lamu. I was in Lamu in 1992. I was still a serving officer in the government. And what we are dealing with in Lamu then is still the same problem that we're experiencing right now. We are talking about Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab came the other day. We had the first military camp in Lamu, a place called Baragoni, in 1969. We had a GSU base at a place called Mokoe in 1972, dealing with the cases of banditry. What was the cause of banditry? Injustices. And then we had people who were living in the Boni Forest, a community that felt like now we're being pushed out of our ancestral land. And that caused a major problem. So we were there trying to create a buffer zone between these communities and people who had been brought in to settle. So with the current eruption of insecurity in Lamu, you look at the way Al-Shabaab were operating. Al-Shabaab were not targeting civilians. At some point they changed their method of attacks. They now started concentrating on hitting military installations, military convoys, and military camps and police camps in that area. But all of a sudden, we are having an upsurge of civilians being targeted. So if we have to deal with the problem of insecurity in Lamu, we have to identify, are we dealing with Al-Shabaab or homegrown terror in the name of a community that is dissatisfied with the way they are being governed in that area. So if you look very closely at the way we are trying to deal with terrorism in Kenya, we've left out a very crucial ingredient in the fight against terrorism. And this is why we are failing. We can have the NSIS, we can give them a lot of resources, we can spy on people, we can monitor them, can monitor their communication, but unless we bring in the community.
So it goes back to what Dr. Abdulhab is saying. I mean, we might have the best military power, but it still goes back to the ideological war that we need to fight.
This is what we refer to as popular intelligence. Incorporating members of the public in the war against terrorism. And if you look closely, immediately after Westgate, we started what we called Manyumba Kumi initiative.
Yes, true.
What happened? So the reason for Manyumba Kumi was informed by what I'm talking about, popular intelligence. Let's have members of the public incorporated so that when these people see what they feel is abnormal, they can be able to report to the security apparatus so that action can be taken. But it failed. Why did it fail? Because of what Dr. said here, corruption, mistrust. Mistrust that is focused on the security apparatus, mistrust between members of the public and the government agencies. And this is the problem now we are facing in northeastern and as well as the coast region, whereby the community feels, they feel safer dealing with an enemy that they know rather than dealing with a government that they do not understand. Because when we take government to these areas, we take government in form of security operations. We take government there in form of the military. And when the military get there, their focus is not dealing with the enemy, their focus is now dealing with the community. They feel like you are the people that are harboring these criminals. Yet, the community itself is a victim. So you become a victim of the Al-Shabaab and you become a victim of your own government. So if we continue like this, I'm 100% sure we're not going to deal with the issue of terrorism. No country in the world has ever reached that level where they say we've dealt with terrorism 100%. There's always that gap. But we need to reduce this to a minimal level, acceptable levels. And the way we are approaching it, I feel it's wrong. And they have just discussed about the role of the private security in this. The idea is noble, but the implementation is what is wrong. Because Dr. Murilo has said these are businesses. And the way the government is getting in, registering these companies, what they are not doing, they are not coming in and bringing in equipment. They are not coming in and saying, now we're going to offer training. What they are doing is that they are registering them, and for you to be registered, there's a revenue that you need to pay. So there's a lot of resistance from the operators in that industry. And they are saying, no, we felt like we're supposed to be partners in this. Now it's not an issue of being partners, it's an issue of government coming in and saying, you have to be registered, you have to pay this amount of money for you to be running this practice. And at the end of the day, it's being counterproductive. Are the businesses able to afford to put in money in this venture? Do we have capacity as businesses to train our people to that level that the government wants? I thought this is supposed to be a governmental responsibility. Giving to the community, saying that we need to work together, we need to cooperate so that we can reduce these issues of terrorism. If you get down here, go to all these shopping malls. We are talking about metal detectors. We call them metal detectors. A metal detector will not be able to detect a plastic bomb. And are these guards equipped to be able to identify a threat? You see, when we are fighting terrorism, you should realize that we have 5 steps in a terror attack. And the first step is always target identification. There you have nothing. You can do nothing about it. They are here. These are sleeper cells. They have been told now we have a target in Nairobi. It has been identified. So the second stage is what we refer to as target surveillance. This is when these people will expose themselves. They will come, for example, we are told these guys went to the Westgate shopping mall. They they let out a stall, and they were doing their surveillance inside the mall.
For 2 years?
For 2 years.
Right.
The same thing happened at the Dusit. They used to come, tip the guards, get into a cafe, take coffee. For almost 2 months, nobody noticed. But if we had empowered the guards with surveillance skills, and this should come from the government, if we had empowered the people around there, the florists, the shopkeepers, this is what happened in London. A group of people from the community were empowered. They bus conductors.
All right.
So that you can be able to look at a person and see this person is behaving abnormally. We had one of the American embassy bombers living in Witu for more than 5 years. Very generous, buying uniforms for the local football team. He even married a local girl, had a very good wedding, and then the community could not be able to realize that this is an enemy within. So these are things we are talking about, and these are realities. The community plays an integral role in the war against terrorism. Unless we endear the community to the government, endear the community to the security agencies so that they can work together, give this popular intelligence, then we are still very far away from dealing with the issue of terrorism in this country.
All right. And I know you wanted to add Dr. Abdulhab and Muliro as well, but we have to take a quick break here on AM Live. When we come back, we're going to continue with that conversation and also talk about the drawdown of the troops under the Africa Transition Mission in Somalia and really what this means in terms of countering violent extremism, not just in Kenya, but the region as well. Stay with us. The hashtag we're using is MLive NTV at NTV Kenya at Zainab Ismail. We're going to be back in a short while.
Join us at the 254 Realty and Homes Expo this September 29th and 30th, 2023 at the KICC Courtyard in Nairobi. We welcome all real estate stakeholders to participate, showcasing projects, networking, transacting and sharing knowledge to the growth of Kenya's housing sector. Our theme for this event is Reimagining Affordable Housing. Contact Solomon on 0716-034-850 or email skariuki@ke.nationmedia.com for inquiries. Shape the future of affordable housing in Kenya with us.
Natalia is mine.
What's wrong? Diego.
I tried, but you seem to be worse than an iceberg.
Why did you keep from me the fact that you have a twin brother? Alberto told me everything. You are hurting me. Diego, you are really
Stop
hurting
calling me like that!
Tell me why! You are hurting me now! Let go of me!
Head over heels.
And people come in and they're like, oh, it works. I can have ice cream and I'm not in any discomfort. I recommend Sensodyne because it works. It's brilliant.
When you're finally released from pain, that moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
Sasa unaweza furahia videos bila wasiwasi. Buy any Safaricom weekly bundle and get 500 MB of YouTube free to enjoy videos made for you. Furahia michezo utakavyo. Jielimishe, ujiinue kimaisha. Ingia Zone na YouTube. Get free 500 MB of YouTube when you buy any Safaricom weekly bundle. Just dial *544# au tembelea my Safaricom app today.
All right, welcome back to the program. You are watching AM Live here on NTV as we take a look at matters of security in the country and the region as well, coming on the backdrop of the 10-year anniversary, or is it we're marking 10 years of that incident that happened at the Westgate Mall here in Nairobi on the 21st of September back in 2013. And even as we continue with this conversation in terms of security and countering terrorism in Kenya and the region at large, what we know is that the troops who are under the African Transition Mission in Somalia is actually expected to be fully out of Somalia by the end of 2024, which means now the obligation to safeguard the territory, that's the Somali territory, and the installations now lie with the Somali security forces. But then again, what does that mean for us as a country who had troops within Somalia? Remember, the 2013 attack actually came about after what the Al-Shabaab termed as retaliatory, attack with the Kenyan government sending the troops in Somalia to be part of the AU mission then. And Muliro, when you're looking at that, the situation now that by 2024, which is just a year from now, Somalia will have, complete power and obligation to ensure the security of its own territory. Do you have the confidence that it is able and fully prepared to ensure that things are under control?
I think the last part of your observation is I get your tone, and it actually says that they are not. Everybody knows that. And we can go to the other side of this debate. We say ideally, if by ideally all variables remain constant, they should be able to transition out there. And if the drivers of Somalia security, the external global powers also agree that they do that. But also remember, Zainab, there is a growing tendency in global security governance that because of, I think, resources, if you look at the structure of AMISOM, is a case of improvisation. That for a long time, the UN or the international relations thinking about intervention was that you don't use neighbors to intervene in another state because they'll come with aspects of regional interests into that. But in Somalia, we did that because the UN and even the AU, the US itself had failed, and therefore those who were highly affected by that, the brothers keepers, had to improvise and use the neighbors. It's easier, even cheaper to transport within that time. And now you can see continuously there is that element of ad hoc bilateral deployments rather than multilateral. And the aspect is because of the fatigue by the international community in terms of resources and interests in African crisis. And therefore, there is a thinking behind that, that even as the African Union transitions and moves out, the neighboring states have already, I think, committed to remain and deploy bilaterally. I think it's only Burundi that will not be, but the rest, Uganda already will still, the government itself of Somalia prefers that they remain in Mogadishu. But then also one observation that was seen in the transition and exit agreement was that it is a military troops. The police component was supposed to remain and continue supporting, they say, the security sector reforms in Somalia and entrench that. But the government of Somalia, I think, has also requested that the police also exit, and that has thrown the whole thing into some form of confusion. We don't know whether they also now want the regional states to move. But I'll say this, Zainab, that even when the troops are in Somalia, I think it's last month, Prof, you will help me, I don't know, it is guerrilla. When the AU troops handed over the territory they had taken from Al-Shabaab, it didn't take 2 weeks or 1 week. Al-Shabaab recaptured that, and it tells you something about when we totally exit. But still, you know, this doctrine that was borrowed from the US, the idea of fighting terrorism from the source. The US has moved further and said, you know, use the locals to fight, use your money to fight terrorism. We will no longer deploy our own troops, but we go to the source and recruit, use our money, recruit the locals. So we also went there, AU moved in with that thinking that we fight terrorism at the source. But you saw the spillover, the backlash that was there. And incidentally, in a paradoxical manner, you will see, Zainab, that it may happen in the sense that two sides of a negotiation process, so that they discuss. Just like, you know, now Doc was talking, but I thought very hard. The exit of the US from Afghanistan, if you look behind, has created some level of relative peace. The Afghan people are now speaking as members of that state, looking for ways to solve their own problems. Leave alone the modes of leadership, whether it's democratic or not, but we are not seeing cases of injustice and everyday people crying that people are being killed and the rest there. Somalia should be able, at this time, with the exit of ATMIS, to think about bringing everybody at the table. But I don't know whether it will happen in that case there. And that is why there is a provision that the regional states will still remain in bilaterally and with the agreement of the government of the day, and see whether the peace process.
A different structure that really isn't ATMIS, once ATMIS has been completely you know, withdrawn from Somalia, perhaps in a more different you know, structure, that then we would still have troops within Somalia, but and different, you know, sort of a negotiation between.
Yes,
and by the way, this
states.
coming at a time, I believe Somalia is said to be accepted into the East African Community Bloc by November of this year, I believe. So that perhaps would still put the pressure on the neighboring countries to ensure that the security of Somalia is still paramount to the region.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Actually, you've seen I think states are almost continuously preferring that. You saw that in DRC, that the government of the day was reluctant about the multilateral deployment of East Africa Regional Force, but they have allowed Uganda to go bilateral on its own. They want states, Angola on its own in that case, because one-to-one, and that is what is being almost allowed. But then, just to conclude, will there be a backlash? I'm looking at the other side there, on the other side of the coin, that we may have relative peace. But on the other side of the coin is that we have when we went to Somalia, somebody said that we left our, you are moving very fast to go and put off fire in the neighbor's home, and you leave all the doors of your home open, and when you come back you find them, other people are already there, and the problem has now moved to your home. So we, looking at if the war does not, because actually ATMIS sustained the war in Somalia in the sense that to some level we may say that Al-Shabaab was kept engaged within the territory of Somalia. So if you pull out, then there will be high chances that every time Al-Shabaab feels that, and it is the case, that regional states are supporting the government of the day to remain strong and say that you can join the EAC, they try to disrupt that, create fear within the region so that you don't see that the government of the day is stable and therefore they should join the EAC.
All right.
Okay.
Dr. Abdulhab, still on the issue of ATMIS, the drawdown and the impact of the same, especially for Kenya.
Zainab, AMISOM or ATMIS went to Somalia 15 years ago. To be honest with you, that's a failed project right from the beginning. Because
a failed project? I mean,
it's a failed project.
They've managed to help the Somali government
it's a failed project.
Take over some of the towns.
I have 1,000 examples I'll give you. It's a failed project. Why I'm saying that? You know, the issue of the African, solution to African problem is ATMIS, they have been in Somalia. As we speak right now, there is a war going on inside Somalia, the government of Somalia against Al-Shabaab. ATMIS, they are not part of that operation as we speak right now. Now there's a feeling, there's a concern among the Somali population saying that even if they stay or leave, doesn't affect us, our lives anymore, because they guiding specific installations, nothing else. They are not even going to the field and fighting against Al-Shabaab anymore. Secondly, the issue of what you call the neighboring states can assist if the ATMIS, left Somalia. It is also a question of the Congo. Congo is part of East African community. As we speak right now, Congo is more than 110 rival groups inside the Congo is fighting. Why the East African community can go there and assist them? The question people are asking, why don't you stabilize the Congo as well? Congo has a similar problem with Somalia, exactly similar problems. The other issue I'm going to say is the government of Somalia, it was in fact they were willing, to conduct what they call Black Lion Operation. Black Lion Operation is kind of the Sahel state, whereby the Sahel, alliance states, they come together and assist one another so that they can easily defeat Al-Shabaab, terrorism group. But the question is, because of a large number, some researchers, they believe that the ECOWAS and and ATMIS and what they call IGAD, they're becoming what they call new colonial tool. Some people are saying that because it's being funded by the Europeans, funded by the Western world. Why can't we fend our own war so that we own the problem we own the problem, so that we can easily resolve our problems as an Africans? This is a question now that people are asking. This is a question now. It's a new thinking, by the way. It's a new. It's a case study. If today Somali government now say they declare war, as we speak right now, the Somali head of state is somewhere in the central region of Somalia, just fighting against Al-Shabaab. No, where is the neighboring states? Where is Kenya? Where is Somalia, Ethiopia? Where Djibouti? Why can't we assist them? Because they don't want to export that war into their respective countries. They want to contain Al-Shabaab within Somalia. That's exactly the notion behind the whole thing. But the question is, now ATMIS, they are leaving Somalia. And the possibility of just like a Taliban, again, those, Al-Shabaab, controlling the entire country, I think it's a 50-50. It's kind of, it's a fear you cannot ignore. But there's a difference between Al-Shabaab also and the Taliban as well. Taliban is a homegrown, organization. Why the Taliban were Al-Shabaab, some members of Al-Shabaab, they are foreign fighters. They are foreign fighters.
Foreign fighters.
So they're pushing their foreign agenda. That's the difference between Taliban and Al-Shabaab. You must understand that. The other issue I'm going to say is, let me go back to the issue of our local issues. If our government are willing to contain Al-Shabaab in our borders, I have one good advice. Our administration, he did a mistake, a grave mistake, when he was just, abducting the people from the houses. According to research we have done, almost 1,340 people have been abducted. If it's criminal, let them go into due process. Take him to court. Are we together? But if that will create, abducting the people, enforce disappearances, killing, extrajudicial killings, will create a mistrust between the security apparatus and local population. So the local population, they no longer trust what they call the security apparatus. They see us as gangsters. Are we together? And that must be addressed. That must be government must be addressed, because hopefully Ruto administration is much better than Uhuru administration when it came to those issues. In fact, since Ruto came to power, I think he not entertain what they call the enforced surveillance and extrajudicial killing. In fact, he stopped it.
But we do have reports from human rights groups in the country.
Which is a step forward,
that's still happening, though.
Okay, of course, you cannot eliminate, something which is going on a years, just in the span of 1 year. It will take time at least to contain it. But he has done, in fact, he has taken a good step, so that he's going to gain, the government, the security apparatus must gain the hearts and the minds of the people, so that the people can assist them, so that together they can easily contain and defeat Al-Shabaab.
All right. You wanted to add something else, Doc?
Just a few things. What I'm saying right now is, there is now war is going on inside Somalia.
All right.
The government of Somalia, they don't have a strategy to defeat Al-Shabaab. Militarily.
They don't have the strategy.
They don't have a strategy. It's a failed strategy, by the way. But day by day, Al-Shabaab now, they became stronger than before, because they are looting and getting sophisticated military hardware. Are we together? They changed the tactics. The problem is,
but they're controlling less, towns in Somalia than a couple of years ago.
Let me tell you one thing. The reality on the ground, let me update you the reality on the ground. Government, they will say, tomorrow we are going to capture El Bur, for instance. Those guys, they just vacate the place. They come in, 2 days later they come back, and they recapture the whole thing. And they're also looting all the military hardware. That's exactly what they're doing. They already recaptured a lot of the villages and the towns. In fact, the government soldiers are already liberated. But unfortunately, if you don't have a strategy whereby you're going to defeat militarily, socially, emotionally, you cannot defeat these people. And again, why the neighboring states are watching these issues? Why can't we assist the Somali government? At least they can easily contain those guys. If they, neighboring states, fail to do that, then God can save us. It will, in fact, they are now they are going to cross over into international borders. They are just 2 days ago. In fact, they killed more than dozen of the Ethiopian soldiers inside Somalia along the border. Don't surprise tomorrow they come over into Madeira, Wajir, Garissa, and Lamu. You don't surprise it. These people, they need a collective engagement. Among their member states, regional member states.
All right.
Yeah.
And Musa Mali, you get the final remarks here. Collective responsibility is what is being said that we need to do.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. And I agree with Daktari that ATMIS was a failed project. The reason being, the war that is being fought by the Al-Shabaab in Somalia is more ideological. Initially, when we went into Somalia as Kenya, when Uganda went into Somalia as Uganda, Burundi went into Somalia as Burundi, we were going in saying we're going to fight Muslim fundamentalists, people that are religiously radicalized. And this is something the Americans realized very early in the war. And this is why they pulled out. They realized this war we are going to fight here, we're not going to win. because we are not fighting with people who are focused on anything. And this is exactly the mistake that activists made. We did not try to understand the Al-Shabaab. If you look at the Al-Shabaab, we need to look at it this way. Who are the Al-Shabaab? Are we fighting people that are Muslim fundamentalists? Are we fighting an economic war? These are just businessmen? Or are we fighting a political war?
Proxy war.
A proxy war. And that's exactly, if we don't understand this, there's no way we are going to come up with strategy to defeat Al-Shabaab. And I think this is what the countries in the Sahel have realized. When the French deployed there, the French went there because they were protecting their own interests.
That's true.
The minerals there.
All right.
And this is why you see the coups in the Sahel area, and all of a sudden the governments have come together collectively and have said, now we need to deal with these people, because those ones, they came in the name of religion, and in reality these are just businessmen. These are people that are out there to steal the resources from these countries in the name of fighting for the rights of the people. And the sooner we realize that, the better for us. This is now how we'll come up collectively as countries in the region, form a formidable unit that will go out there and deal with the Al-Shabaab, not only using military strategy, as well as bringing in the people on board. We've not brought in the Somalis on board in this war. We've just been there fighting and saying we are fighting a faceless enemy. Today we attack, they get out of a town, tactical withdrawal, and then later they come back with full information. That means we have been infiltrated as communities. They know exactly what we're planning, they know exactly what we are going to do, yet we've not been able to do the same with the Al-Shabaab. We've not infiltrated their ranks. They are planning for us, we don't plan for them. So unless we deal with this collectively, we are not going to see the end of Al-Shabaab. And this is exactly what is happening in Libya right now. After the NATO withdrawal, you see, the Libyans are fighting their own war. The same happened in Afghanistan. When the Americans left, now you face each other locally. And I believe what Dr. Muriro said, let us get out, let us tell Somalis, this is your problem.
That's true.
Can you have a sit down and agree on the way forward? Why are you people killing each other? Why are you fighting? And then we defend our borders. I think that is the best strategy to use right now.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
But as opposed to having a force in Somalia that people feel this is an invading force.
Yeah, it's acquiring forces.
Yes, they are not here for us. They are here for their own personal interests.
All right. And I know that's quite interesting, because there's some people who dissent to that opinion and say, you know, we are still literally, we are at your doorstep, literally here at the border. So would that be a solution? But unfortunately, we are running out of time. So we'll have to take this conversation to another day. But thank you, gentlemen. Dr. Abdulwahab Abdulsamad, Chair, Institute Horn of Africa Strategic Studies. Nasongo Muliro, Foreign Policy and Security Specialist from GLOSEPS. George Musamali, Security and Safety Consultant, for joining us this morning to have this conversation. And of course, we'll continue to assess the security situation within our borders and the region as well every Thursday, as we take a look at we take a pulse check of the region and Africa at large. All right, this is where we wind up. Your world is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. You want to stay tuned. My name is Zainab Ismail. Good morning.